Have you ever noticed that the people most desperate to fight back are always the ones with the least real power? Most people live under an illusion of urgency, believing that power means quick response, immediate decision-making, and instant action. But the reality is much more complex and, for some, uncomfortable to admit that every tense situation, every provocation, every moment of social pressure has invisible layers of power operating silently. While you believe you need to do something now or take a stand immediately, others are consciously navigating these dynamics with surgical patience. The most disturbing truth about power is this: whoever reacts first gives up control first. When you respond immediately to provocations, pressures, or apparent opportunities, you've already unconsciously accepted the timing others have established. You've already positioned yourself as a follower, and followers hold no real power. Machiavelli understood something most people never grasp. True power lies not in the speed of reaction, but in the precision of timing. It lies not in doing something first, but in doing the right thing at the precise moment when your action will have maximum impact and minimum resistance. What you'll discover today is a strategy that completely upends our instinctive understanding of how power works. Instead of proving your strength by reacting quickly, you demonstrate your superiority through strategic restraint. Instead of missing opportunities by waiting, you create better ones through calculated patience. The question isn't whether you'll feel pressure to react immediately. You will. The question is, will you give in to that pressure like most people? Or will you use that pressure to identify exactly when the right moment to act is? Prepare to discover the disruptive power of strategic inaction. 3. The laws of power rule. 1. The superiority of observation over action, the tactic. When faced with any situation that demands an immediate response, your first action is not to act. You position yourself as a strategic observer, gathering information about the motivations, patterns, and vulnerabilities of everyone involved. Before committing to any move, this rule operates on the fundamental principle that information is power, and quality information only comes through patient observation. In practice, this means resisting the natural urge to do your part or voice your opinion immediately, and instead taking the time to map out the true dynamics of the situation. You can implement this through physical and mental positioning that favors observation, choosing places where you can see everyone involved, asking questions that encourage others to reveal more, and using phrases like interesting or tell me more to keep others talking. While you collect data, timing is crucial. You observe until you have a clear understanding of who wants what, who fears what, and what the true motivations behind apparent positions are. Only then do you consider how and whether to act. The secret lies in transforming your apparent passivity into informational superiority. While others are wasting energy reacting, you are accumulating strategic intelligence. The psychology behind patient observation activates the prefrontal cortex, strategic planning area, while immediate reaction activates only the limbic system, emotional response area. When you observe before you act, you are literally using more sophisticated parts of your brain. From a cognitive perspective, this works because the human brain reveals more information when not under direct scrutiny. When you don't react immediately, people assume you're not an immediate threat and behave more naturally and revealingly. When you apply this rule, you're essentially collecting data on behavioral patterns that impulsive people never notice. This creates a strategic advantage because you can predict future behavior based on observed patterns. The reason most people are vulnerable to their own impulsivity is that they confuse speed with power, when in fact real power comes from accuracy based on complete information. Rule 2. Force others to reveal their cards. First, the tactic. You use your strategic patience to create power vacuums that others feel compelled to fill, revealing your true intentions, resources, and limitations before you have to reveal yours. Your inaction becomes a tool for extracting information. This approach is based on the understanding that impatient people interpret inaction as weakness or indecision, and often help by revealing more than they intended to force a reaction from you. Implementing this requires you to create situations where your position is unclear, forcing others to make assumptions or offers to figure out where you stand. In negotiations, you let them make the first offer. In conflicts, you let them escalate first. In opportunities, you let them reveal their true interests first. You can apply this through ambiguous phrases like, "I am considering several options," or "This requires careful thought." You're not lying or being evasive. You're being appropriately cautious while collecting data. The most effective context are situations where there are multiple parties involved, because social pressure amplifies people's need to do something. When you maintain a neutral position, avoid appearing indecisive or disinterested. Your patience should be perceived as deep reflection, not a lack of decisiveness. The art is in making your restraint appear sophisticated, not passive. The psychology behind this exploits the human tendency to fill information vacuums with our own projections and desires. When you don't reveal your position immediately, other people's brains start generating scenarios to explain your inaction, often revealing their own priorities in the process. Psychologically, this triggers what researchers call the uncertainty effect. When people don't know where you stand, they tend to overshare information in an attempt to gain clarity about your position. The mechanism works through ambiguity anxiety. Humans have difficulty tolerating situations where they don't know where others stand socially. This anxiety often leads to premature disclosures of strategies, resources, or intentions. Neurologically, this activates pattern-finding systems in other people's brains, making them work harder to figure out you while inadvertently revealing themselves in the process. People respond this way because we evolved in small groups where knowing everyone's intentions was crucial for survival. Uncertainty about others' positions creates discomfort that seeks resolution. Rule 3. Perfect timing. Through calculated patience, approx. 350 words. The tactic: you use your restraint to identify the exact moment when your action will have maximum impact, when others are most vulnerable, when resources are most available, or when resistance is lowest. Perfect timing is worth more than brute force. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that opportunities have cycles, and those who wait for the right moment can achieve with less effort what others cannot achieve with great effort at the wrong time. In practice, this means observing patterns of energy, attention, and resources in the people and situations around you. You map when people are most receptive, when they are most distracted, and when they have more or less available resources. You can implement this by observing cycles: times of day when people make better decisions, times of the week when they're less defensive, times of the year when they're more open to change. You align your important actions with these optimal moments. Timing is crucial. You act when multiple favorable factors converge: high receptivity, available resources, minimal distractions, and high energy. Avoid acting when any of these factors are unfavorable. The key is to distinguish between real opportunities and perceived opportunities. Real opportunities come with natural timing. Perceived opportunities are often traps of artificial urgency. The psychology behind timing exploits natural fluctuations in human cognitive and emotional states. Studies in chronobiology show that our ability to make decisions, process information, and resist influences varies dramatically throughout the day, week, and year. From a neurological perspective, this works because different brain states are associated with different levels of openness to ideas, willingness to take risks, and ability to process complex information. Psychologically, this exploits the fact that psychological resilience is not constant. It varies based on factors such as fatigue, stress, mood, distractions, and available cognitive resources. When you act with the right timing, you are essentially surfing natural waves of human receptivity rather than swimming against currents of resistance. The mechanism works because it maximizes the likelihood of success by aligning your action with naturally favorable mental states in others, rather than trying to force change when resistance is high. Rule 4. Transforming pressure into intelligence, the tactic. When others try to force you to react quickly, you use that very pressure as a source of information about your motivations, fears, and limitations. Artificial urgency often reveals real desperation. This approach is based on the understanding that people who push for quick answers usually have specific reasons for their haste, and those reasons rarely benefit you. Implementing this requires you to ask yourself, why do they want an answer now? What happens if I wait? What are the real consequences of delay versus the artificial consequences they're creating? You can apply this through responses that acknowledge the pressure, but maintain your temporal autonomy. I understand this seems urgent to you. Help me understand why the timing is so critical. Or, I need more information before committing to something of this magnitude. The most effective context are situations where someone is offering a can't-miss opportunity or creating an artificial deadline. Often, these pressures reveal that the person has something to gain from their quick decision. Avoid being obstinate or disrespectful of legitimate deadlines, but also don't automatically accept that all urgency is genuine. The art lies in distinguishing between legitimate pressure and manipulation through artificial urgency. The psychology behind creating artificial urgency is a common psychological tactic that exploits our evolutionary tendency to react quickly to perceived threats. When someone creates time pressure, they're often trying to bypass our rational analysis systems. Psychologically, this works because the brain in a state of urgency activates the sympathetic fight-or-flight system, which prioritizes action over analysis. People who create artificial urgency know this and are trying to force you to make decisions with less sophisticated parts of your brain. The mechanism works through what psychologists call scarcity bias. We tend to overvalue things that seem to be becoming unavailable. When someone creates time pressure, they are artificially activating this bias. Neurologically, resisting artificial pressure allows your prefrontal cortex to maintain control over decision-making, rather than allowing the amygdala, fear center, to dominate the process. When you turn pressure into intelligence, you are essentially using others' manipulative tactics against them, gathering data about their true motivations by analyzing their pressure techniques. Rule 5. The art of making others make mistakes first. The tactic. You allow others to act impulsively and make mistakes that you can avoid because you observe their failures in real time. Your patience becomes a direct competitive advantage through learning from other people's mistakes. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that the first mover in complex situations often makes mistakes that reveal traps, resistance, or unforeseen consequences that the second player can avoid. In practice, this means letting others test strategies, approaches, or tactics first, observing which ones work and which ones fail, and then refining your own approach based on this free intelligence. You can implement this through strategic positioning as a second player in competitive situations. In presentations, you volunteer to go last. In negotiations, you let them make offers and counteroffers first. In conflicts, you observe which arguments work and which backfire. Timing is crucial. You wait long enough to see clear patterns of success and failure, but not so long that all opportunities are missed. The art is knowing when you've collected enough data to act with a significant advantage. The secret is to transform your second position into strategic superiority through intelligent observation and evidence-based adaptation. The psychology behind this exploits the phenomenon known as first-mover disadvantage in situations of incomplete information. When the situation is complex and the consequences are uncertain, those who act first often pay the cost of discovering problems that others can avoid. From a cognitive perspective, this works because it allows you to use the feedback loop of others' experiences to calibrate your own strategy. You essentially outsource the trial and error process. Psychologically, this activates your observational learning system. unique human capacity that allows us to learn from the experience of others without paying the direct costs of that experience. Neurologically, this allows you to use mirror neurons, neural systems that activate when we observe the actions of others, to mentally simulate different strategies before implementing them. The mechanism works because it turns other people's impatience into free education for you. Every mistake they make is a lesson you don't need to learn through experience. Rule 6. Controlling the narrative through strategic silence, the tactic. When others are creating drama, conflict, or controversy, you use your lack of reaction to force them to escalate to the point where they reveal themselves as unreasonable, allowing your eventual response to appear measured and superior. Their silence forces them to expose themselves. This approach is based on the understanding that impulsive people often escalate situations to levels that make them seem out of proportion, especially when they don't receive the emotional reaction they expected. Implementing this requires extraordinary resistance to the urge to defend yourself, correct misunderstandings, or clarify your position. Instead, you allow others to fill your silence with projections, assumptions, and escalations that gradually reveal your true character. You can implement this through strategic non-responses, not responding to provocations, not correcting misinformation immediately, not defending yourself against minor accusations. You wait until the full picture of their behavior is visible to everyone. The most effective contexts are public or professional situations where there are observers who can witness the difference between your self-control and the lack of control of others. Avoid using this in situations where silence could be interpreted as an admission of guilt or where there are real consequences for not clarifying misunderstandings. The art is to distinguish between a drama that resolves itself and problems that require intervention. The psychology behind strategic silence exploits the human tendency to project meaning in the absence of information. When you don't react as expected, other people's brains start creating narratives to explain your inaction, often revealing their own insecurities in the process. Psychologically, this triggers what researchers call the escalation effect. When people don't receive the validation or reaction they expected, they often escalate their behaviors in an attempt to force a response. The mechanism works through behavioral contrast. The more others escalate, the more their restraint appears superior. Observers naturally sympathize with the person who maintains composure. Neurologically, this allows you to maintain activation of the prefrontal cortex, executive control area, while others operate primarily through the amygdala, emotional reaction center, creating an obvious disparity in self-control. People respond by escalating because they interpret a lack of reaction as invalidation of their concerns, not realizing that they are revealing themselves as emotionally unstable in the process. Rule 7. Creating opportunities through strategic patience, the tactic. You use periods of apparent inaction to position yourself strategically, build resources, and identify opportunities that impatient people miss by always reacting to immediate situations. Patience becomes strategic productivity. This rule operates on the fundamental principle that real opportunities often require advanced preparation and precise timing, both impossible when you are constantly reacting to immediate demands. In practice, this means using quiet periods to develop skills, build relationships, accumulate resources, and map out future opportunities that others miss because they're focused only on what's happening now. You can achieve this through consistent investment in long-term capabilities, learning skills that will be valuable in the future, cultivating relationships that may be useful later, and saving resources for future opportunities. Timing is crucial. You identify patterns of when opportunities typically appear in your field and prepare in advance to capitalize on them when they arise. The key is to recognize that impatient people are often too busy doing things to adequately prepare for meaningful opportunities. Their patience becomes a competitive advantage. Avoid procrastination. Disguised as strategy, strategic patience involves active preparation, not passivity. The art lies in distinguishing between lazily waiting and productively waiting. The psychology behind this explores the difference between short-term and long-term thinking. Neuroscience studies show that impatient people have greater activation in brain areas associated with immediate reward, while patient people have greater activation in areas of future planning. Psychologically, this works because it allows for the compound effect. Small, consistent actions over time produce disproportionately large results compared to intense, sporadic efforts. The mechanism works through what behavioral economists call the delayed gratification advantage. The ability to postpone immediate gratification for greater future benefits correlates strongly with long-term success. Neurologically, this activates and strengthens executive control circuits in the brain, improving your overall strategic decision-making ability. When you choose strategic patience over immediate reaction, you are essentially investing in better, future opportunities rather than wasting energy on less important immediate demands. 4. The mindset shift. These rules aren't just isolated tactics to be used sporadically. They represent a fundamental shift in how you perceive time, opportunity, and power. When you master the art of never reacting first, you develop what Machiavelli considered the hallmark of true power: the ability to act by choice, not compulsion. You stop being a slave to circumstances and become the architect of your own opportunities. When you internalize these laws, you're not just learning to be more patient. You're developing a keen awareness of how real timing works. You begin to see that most people waste power reacting to artificial urgencies created by others or by their own anxieties. This is the difference between being reactive and being strategic, between living in the constant urgency of others and operating on your own superior timing, between proving your capability through frenetic action and demonstrating your superiority through powerful restraint. True mastery isn't about never acting. That would be paralysis. Mastery lies in acting only when your action will have maximum impact with minimum effort, when resistance is low and resources are aligned in your favor. When you operate from this heightened temporal awareness, you stop competing in the speed game that others play and start playing the precision game that you always win. When you operate from this heightened awareness, artificial urgencies no longer hold sway over you. You see through time pressure tactics and respond only when it's strategically advantageous. 5. The mastery of art. The ability to control your timing is perhaps the purest form of personal power there is, because it transforms time, the scarcest resource of all, into your greatest strategic advantage. The rules we've just explored aren't abstract theories. They're fundamental laws of how real power works that operate independently of your awareness of them. The difference is that now you have the choice to remain a slave to others' timing or develop mastery of your own. The truly powerful person is not the one who acts the fastest, nor the one who never acts. It's the one who acts precisely when their action will have maximum impact and encounter minimum resistance. Remember, knowledge without application is just intellectual entertainment. Real power comes from the conscious practice of strategic restraint, keen observation of temporal patterns around you, and the courage to trust your own timing rather than be pressured by the timing of others. Every pressure to act now you face becomes an opportunity to apply these laws. Every artificial urgency is a chance to demonstrate that you understand temporal dynamics that impatient people don't. True power doesn't come from doing things quickly. It comes from doing the right things at the exact moment, when they matter most. Call to action. If this video changed your perspective on timing and strategic patience, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content on personal mastery. In the comments, tell me which of these 7 rules had the greatest impact on your understanding of urgency and timing, and share a situation where you observed someone gain power through strategic patience or lose power through impulsive reaction. Mastering perfect timing begins with awareness, and awareness begins now.